First, London Fashion Week has finally come to a close, but once again, it hasn't passed without criticism of some of the designers who use extremely thin models. Watched by the likes of Samantha Cameron, the luxury label Erdem featured one of the skinniest models around, the Swedish Chloe, and I hope this is right, Memisevic, as did knitwear designer Mark Fast, who grabbed headlines in the past with his use of plus-size models. However, journalist Liz Jones says fashion designers may insist that they've turned their backs on anorexic chic, but you only have to look at the shows to see that they haven't. But is it time, then, to leave high fashion shows just to produce them any way that they see fit, or how they see fit?
Well, you won't believe this, but I actually went to the London Fashion Show on Monday.
The London Fashion Show? You mean one of the shows at London Fashion Week?
Yes, London Fashion Week. I can't even say it right. And I was there purely by chance. Didn't know I was going. If you'd have seen the outfit,
turned left.
Oh,
this isn't my
No, I thought I was going to a radio studio. Didn't know that they were doing it from London Fashion Week. So I turned up and there was like, they are so. The most startling thing is how tall they are when you first get there. They are like 6 foot and above, and it was quite. It did make me gasp at how skinny some of them are. I mean, some of their legs, especially for me, there was a couple of girls walked past and their legs were like thinner than my arms. Honest to God, I'm not exaggerating, and really long legs, you know. And it made me think, so all this size zero thing is, they're just lying about that because they're still using these models. And also, I just thought some of them were like 6 foot. One girl I met was 6'2".
Yeah. And
she was so skinny that, you know, size 0 on someone that's 6'2" is so shocking to see. And I'm not suggesting that they now go and use size 16 plus models. You know, I don't expect them to do that to show off their line of clothes.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's wrong with a size 8, a size 10? I mean, that is a beautiful
healthy,
figure.
you mean?
They look healthy, they've got curves.
Yeah.
These girls didn't have curves.
But, I mean, obviously, you were there. None of us have been there this week and seen these girls in person. But there are a lot of naturally skinny girls around who do become models. They don't necessarily have eating disorders, and they are naturally tall and built that way. And fashion notoriously uses thinner models or slimmer models because their clothes hang better, because that's what they say. And they're showing their wares.
I don't think they do hang better. Ridiculous. They don't look good because there's no shape to them.
I think it's ridiculous. This is a commercial business. They're not artists producing things that are going to hang on the wall. They're in a, you know, they might think they're artists, but actually they're in a very, very commercial business where they stand or fall by the volume of clothes that they sell.
Yeah.
And when you look at most of the big department stores in this country that work with high fashion designers, the average size they sell is 16. So that's way different from the models that you have just shown. Erdem, I've worn his clothes. They're fabulous. They're really expensive, and they've been worn by Michelle Obama and by Sarah Brown. So what on earth is this guy doing showing these clothes? It's disgusting.
Well, but did you not see their argument? I'm not necessarily saying it's my argument, but their argument that what they're doing is putting on a high-end show. They're not necessarily saying that this is how we want our clothes to look on the everyday woman, but we're putting on a show, and this is a look that we want to create. That it's different.
But it filters down to the high street, their look, and young girls will look at those pictures and they will really have a profound influence.
I think it's an unrealistic world that they live in. It's not our world, is it? I don't know who the hell's world it is. I mean, when you look at these clothes, they don't filter down as they stand there to the high street. They changed, and, you know, for the people who can wear them, like us. You know, like proper people with proper-sized bodies. And I think it's very unfair, and I think it frightens me to death when I see that, because young girls do aspire to it. They go, oh, well, you've got to look like that to get a job. You know, and I think that's terrifying.
If you go to, I mean, that's a high-end fashion show. I mean, London Fashion Week, Milan, New York, what have you. They're high-end fashion shows. If you go to, there are many other fashion shows that happen throughout the year.
Yeah, of course.
And they use very healthy-looking models. They're your average, I don't know, anywhere from size 8 to 14. They're showing a wide range of sizes and styles.
Well, they are starting to
everyone just seems to focus on the high end.
Those pictures from London Fashion Week are the image of British fashion, of a £1 billion industry that's really valuable to this country, those are the images that have now gone round the world as the look we think is desirable. And I
But
think
surely
it's
that's to
disgusting.
fit in, because I mentioned Milan, New York, Paris, what have you. Surely I can appreciate why they would use the same type of models that are used internationally if they're fighting within that market. What I'm saying is that's not representative of all fashion.
No, but Jean-Paul Gaultier, for example, is a really fantastic designer who's dressed people like Madonna. He used larger women in his last show, and he used women from a wide age range, and he's always said fashion comes from within.
But it's what young girls look at. That's that's the terrible thing, isn't it? That they look at that and think that's what you should look like.
OK, we'll draw a line under that. It's competition time again. Now, today, the government is set to announce an initiative to encourage warring couples set to divorce to consider mediation sessions at up to £300 an hour prior to heading to court. The new rules, which will come into force in April, have been agreed between ministers and judges and will see couples who cannot agree on how to divide up their belongings and share responsibility for their children having to attend a mediation awareness session. So what this means is, instead of a judge ruling on the details of their divorce, they'll be encouraged to hammer out the deal with the help of trained mediators, which will in turn cut the government's legal aid bill. But does it go far enough? And do you think that compulsory mediation, do you think it would save a lot of heartache as well as the lawyers' fees?
For me, it would definitely be about the lawyers' fees. I mean, people gasped then when you said £300 an hour. You know, when me and Shane got divorced, it cost, I'm not going to say how much, but thousands from me and him.
But that's only a couple of letters.
I mean,
by the time they've gone back and forth.
You know, our divorce was £300 a letter every time they sent you an email, and they send so many, you know. And we were very amicable. And in actual fact, the only time the animosity set in was because of these letters the lawyers were sending, which were just so horribly worded that it riled you up, and it was like, well, I'm not doing that. How dare he say that about me? So I think in our case, because it was amicable, it would have been great to sit down just with a mediator, just say, OK, you know, I want this, you have that. And then it just goes to court and they stamp it. Because the thing is, as well, when you get to court, you don't really get your say as such anyway.
And also, when you're getting divorced, you know, fingers crossed, you don't know how to do it. No. You don't know how to get divorced because hopefully you'll have never done it before. So what you see...
The problem with it all is that if it isn't amicable. I mean, I don't know many couples that get to that edge that are happy enough and content enough to say, well, we'll still be friends, so let's sit in this room. Let's discuss it, shall we? What would you like? What would you like? I don't know many people. I know what I'd be like.
But that's why you've got the mediator there, because before you can actually go at each other's throats, they will go, well, hold on a minute,
but
what
how
do you want to say?
How do you actually get in that room to start with?
Why I think it's a good idea is because in industrial disputes we have something called ACAS, which manages to get people who can't even bear to be in the same room together to eventually, they start off in separate rooms and they work down the corridor, and eventually they do manage to sit around a table together and hammer out resolutions to some of the most tricky industrial disputes, you know, in this country. If you apply those principles to a divorce, it could be a really good thing.
Maybe I need ACAS, John.
You need ACAS. You need to be in a separate room, inching down that corridor.
For the next 25
and when you
years.
Get finally in the room, you need a screen so you can't see each other. But I can see the sense
like that,
here.
screwing up bits of paper.
It does sound a pretty sensible idea because, as Colleen has said, the huge cost involved in a divorce when everybody wants to have the final say will run into thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. And lawyers are running up these huge bills because it's in their interest to prolong the misery.
Well, they don't want it to stop, do
they?
they?
Kept delaying ours. My divorce took about 3.5 years from start to
You see,
finish.
I don't understand. Why would a divorce take 3.5 years?
Because they kept delaying it, and then if he didn't sign the papers on time, they'd have to put out more papers, and then they'd have to find him if he was on the tour, and that cost you money. You know, and it was them. In the end, we both sat down and said, actually, who's making money here?
But with this mediator, does that mean that that is it? You go in the room, you decide, and that is the end of it, so you don't have all those letters?
What they're saying is that if you can hammer out some kind of deal between the two of you, then that deal in itself can then be taken to the judge, and then it's ruled on. Yeah, exactly. It saves all the back and forth.
So it is a good idea.
What do you think of the idea, anyway, of some kind of mediation? Because I know when I was going through my divorce, we actually went for counselling, and for my part, it was to help us get to a point where we could understand why we were splitting up. I know a lot of people go and see a counsellor maybe to try and stay together, but I think it can be just as useful at certain times for you to reach a place where you realise that this is why it hasn't worked. I
tried with a disastrous marriage to the younger man I married in the middle of the night in Las Vegas. I thought, well, it's not working. It's not working. Right, so I go to a counsellor to see why it's not working. He went, I went, and then we were supposed to go together to talk it through. And when I rang the doorbell and entered the room, he ran down the corridor and locked himself in the toilet. And he said, if that bitch is here, I'm not coming out. So, you know, that was it. That was the end of my marriage.
And that was the mediator.
Oh, sorry. Apologies for the language.
Well, although I'm sure you've been called far worse.
Yeah.
OK.